Hi, I'm Jake with AfterFaith.com and AtheistNetwork.com, and I'm answering the question, why are atheists considered evil by most people? Well, my own explanation for that basically is the slave mentality of theism. Well, what do I mean by that, the slave mentality of theism? Well, in particular, in this case, I'll give the example of Christianity. A long time ago in this country, in the United States, we had slaves. Now, there were three basic positions. There was the owner of the slaves. There was what was called the house slave, and the house slave took care of the owner and the owner's property. And then you had the field slave. Now, it was the job of the house slave to tell the field slaves what the owner wanted the field slaves to do. Now, the funny thing is, though, to keep the field slave in line, the house slave would say many things. And some of those things were like, if you leave the master, the outside world out there is going to eat you up. You're going to die. You're going to get hurt. You're going to get killed. And sometimes what they would do is when they would chase down a slave and bring him back, they'd bring him back tortured. They'd bring him back hunted. They'd bring him back killed. And they say, look, this is what happens when you leave the master. Another thing that they would say is the master cares about you. The master only wants what's best for you. Stay with the master and you'll be safe. Leave the master and there'll be no safety guaranteed. Disobey the master and you'll be punished. Well, obviously there's a comparison there to modern day Christianity. Christianity says believe in Jesus because he wants you to be safe. If you don't believe in Jesus, then there's going to be suffering. You can see that there's definitely a slave mentality. But see, once you get that slave mentality ingrained within you, a certain kind of thing starts to happen. You start to sympathize with your captors, or sympathize with the people who are making you slaves. So then at this point, other people who aren't slaves as you are, who aren't protected as you are, who aren't following the master's views as you are, okay, are simply trying to tempt you into suffering. They're simply trying to tempt you to go into pain as they are. They're trying to make it so that you're just as bad off as they are. See, that little mentality going on in there, there's that little thought process that kind of continues, isn't it? You can see it. So what happens is that basically all these Christians out there, all these theists out there who are putting down atheists, the atheist is the one that's free, and they see that freedom. And what do they start to do? They start to say, oh, you're only an atheist because you want to be able to do whatever you want to do and you don't want to have to be a good person. Now, what's a good person then? A good person is someone who does what? Who follows the master. And they'll say to you, hey, you know, you don't want to believe in a God because you just want to be able to go off and do whatever you want and hurt yourself and hurt people and whatever and have no consequence. Again, if you don't follow the master, you'll be in suffering. So you see, all these people out there are suffering from this slave mentality. This slave mentality that tells them that freedom is something to avoid. That knowledge is something to avoid. So see, what you start to get is this slave mentality that everybody else is the enemy. That everyone else is basically hurting you, they're damaging you, they're stopping you from progressing. So you see, atheists become hated because we're seen as the ones that are opposing their protection. We are opposing their safety. So to them, hey, we're the bad guys. Hope that answers your question.